Welcome to the 826 Valencia podcast.
First up, we have Wendy Sanchez, a senior at Galileo Academy of Science and Technology, whose short story, La Ciguanaba, appeared in the 826 publication Home Wasn't Built in a Day.
In 2006, 826 Valencia came to my school, Galileo Academy of Science and Technology. We were going to write short stories about our family, and at the end, these stories were going to be put together in a book. For several weeks, we worked really hard. It was non-stop writing and editing. Writing these stories was hard for some of us because we expressed personal feelings that we have never shared before. My piece is about the story my grandpa told my cousins and me growing up. At first, I thought it was going to be a simple task, but I ended up writing a total of 9 drafts. During this time, we also had meetings that took place at 826. Meetings where we discussed the structure of the book and how the design was going to look. After all that hard work, it finally paid off. More than 50 stories were able to go on our book, Home Wasn't Built in a Day. Here's my piece in its entirety. Across the blue and green mountains, there's a small country called El Salvador. In El Salvador, there's a small village called San Isidro. There, the streets are sandy and the sun shines like gold. In this village lives an old man named Juan. He wears a white t-shirt and khaki pants, and his sandals are dusty and brown. He lives in a yellow house with a green front door and green frame windows. When Juan walks in the green door, he enters the living room. The walls are made of small bricks and the light is dim, which makes it hard to see. On the walls, Juan has pictures of his granddaughters and great-grandsons. It is a simple room furnished with a table and a chair and a TV. In the middle of Juan's living room, there's a wooden rocking chair. Every night, when the sky is dark and the stars are shining, Juan walks slowly to his rocking chair and takes a seat. As he makes his way across the dim room, I can see his wrinkly hands and face. Now is the time when all the granddaughters gather around him. As he rocks, Tia Chusita is in Juan's kitchen, opening bottles of cola champagne. She comes out of the courtyard where her daughters and I are playing. She calls, "It's late, girls, come inside. I have some soda to cool you down." I complain, "No, Tia, can't we just stay out here a little longer? Haven't I told you about what comes out in the dark here?" She turns to Grandpa and says, "Papi, why don't you tell them the story about La Ciguanaba?" She looks at us and says, "I bet you girls won't even sleep tonight because you'll be so scared to do so. Tell them, Daddy." Then it gets silence and my grandpa begins his story. I still remembered it as if it was yesterday. One rainy night, after a dinner of chicken with rice and frijoles, my mom told me to go into the fields and gather more wood for the fire. I took the big farm cart and rolled it down the road to the campus. On my way over there, I thought I was going to lose my mind. Hanging from the trees and running through the corn were the strangest animals I had ever seen. One looked like a misshapen sloth, another like a boar with 9 legs, and another was something I had never seen in my life. Their faces and bodies were deformed. Some looked fat and some looked skinny. Some were so hairy I could only see their mean eyes poking out from their ugly faces. I tried to ignore them and kept on walking, pushing my cart even faster. Suddenly I heard a noise. I turned around like a spinning arrow, but there was nothing there, not even the deformed animals. The only thing I could see were 4 small red lights that I assumed were coming from a car from the 1-lane road nearby. I kept on walking, and 5 minutes later I felt that something was following me again. This time I could hear it breathing. It sounded like a wild animal getting ready to hunt its prey. Though I couldn't see it, I could hear it growling. Right then, I knew I was going to get eaten by something. Out of nowhere, I saw something move fast in front of my eyes. I wasn't able to see anything except a flying white dress. It seemed like a ghost. I was so scared I got shivers all over my body, and my hands got sweaty. I felt as if someone had poured a bucket of water over me. With the animal still behind me, I walked faster and faster. I wanted to hide, but I didn't see anywhere to go except the campos, where the awful animals were. I remember looking at the sky trying to find the ghost and seeing lots of stars and a full moon. Then I came to an open space in the field. I looked for any of the farmers, but there was no one there to help me. In the corner of the clearing, I saw a small shade made out of wood. The wood from the shed was old and crusty, and it had spiders crawling all over it. It seemed that if I touched it, it would all come falling down. The shed had a couple of broken windows, and the door was slightly open. And right in front of the place was a little walkway that went to the back of the shed. I could either go left or right. The shed looked like it had been abandoned to some evil spirit. I wasn't sure if I wanted to go inside to hide from the ghosts and the red lights, or stay outside, away from the haunted shed. The animals behind me made it difficult to concentrate. My heart was beating so hard, I thought I was going to have a heart attack. I turned around one more time. This time, I didn't see anything, not even the red lights or the animals, or the ghosts. Instead of going in, I kept on walking. I still had to get the wood. I finally reached to the wood pile. The chunks were so big that I had to chop some of them into little ones. As soon as I was done, I gathered everything into the farm cart. I worked really fast because I felt that something was watching me from behind. By the time I was ready to leave, it was midnight, and by that time, no one was walking around. The only people around that late were the drunks. I gathered everything I had in the cart and headed home. Once again, I started hearing screeching, strange croaking, and growling coming from different directions. My head spun this way and that. Then I smelled an awful smell. It was excrement. The smell was like the smell of la muerte. I kept pushing the cart as fast as I could, trying to get away from the smell. But the faster I walked, the more the smell came to me. I heard the animals coming towards me once again, this time even closer. I turned around and stepped to the side of my cart. All of a sudden, I saw not only one wolf, but two. Their eyes were glowing, and I was sure these were the red lights I had seen earlier that night. On my right side was a white wolf. It was so white it hurt my eyes. Not only that, but it was also fat. It had big teeth covered with blood. The one on the left was silky black, and instead of being fat, it was skinny. I could see its bones. It too had bloody teeth. Both of the animals looked at me. Their feet were not touching the ground. It was as if they were walking on air. I wanted to run far away from them. I was so scared. My knees were shaking and my body was weak. With all the strength I had, I tried to walk to the safest place I could see. Just then, my grandpa sits back and looks at us. We're waiting to hear what happens next. Then, my Aunt Nita comes from the kitchen and says, "You see, ladies, that's why we don't let you go out at night. You never know what is out there. Something can happen to you and we wouldn't even find out." We all turned around and looked at her. We know, but what happens next? What happens in the story, abuelito? Grandpa stays silent, and then my mom follows Aunt Nita out. "Michelle, it doesn't matter what happens to Grandpa in the story. What matters is that you guys get the message," she says. All the grown-ups start laughing. My cousins and I turn back to Grandpa. He starts again, and we become silent. After walking for a few minutes, I came to the same shed I had seen on the way to the woods. This time it looked a bit different, as if someone was fixing it. The spiders were cleared and the floor looked like it had been cleared out. I started to wonder what was going on. I was about to leave my cart and hide inside the shed because I could still hear the wolves. All of a sudden, something began appearing right in front of the shed. The image became more and more visible. I was frozen in place. The image was a young lady wearing a ripped shirt and skirt. She had long, straight, black hair that dragged past her feet. I noticed her feet were on backwards. Her toenails were long and full of dirt. She was simply floating on air. Her arms were not covered with flesh. They were only bone. I got so scared, I took out my wood chopping machete just in case she tried to do something to me. Then she walked down the stairs. Grandpa sits back and closes his eyes. I would always make fun of my mom when she told me about this lady. I thought she wasn't real, but since that night I believed her. Gosh, I was so scared, he said. My abuelito gets up, he walks to the kitchen, pours himself a cup of water and has a sip. Then he walks back to his rocking chair. My cousins and I look at Grandpa. His forehead is sweaty and he looks worried. Grandpa, why are you sweating so much? Are you okay? Carlita says. Oh, Carla, I'm fine. It's just that... Oh, it's nothing. I was just remembering the images in my head. They have always haunted me, Abuelito says. It must have been real scary for you, Grandpa, I say. He comes forward and it begins again. She then turned right. I was so scared. Her face was not human. It was the skeleton head of a horse. She had eyes, and her mouth was long and her teeth popped out. Then I remembered the wild animals behind me. I turned around and looked at the awful creatures. They were right in front of me. From the other side, I could see the bright light coming towards me. Right then, I turned around and felt a pain in my lower left leg. The black wolf was grabbing and biting my skin. I started shaking my leg and hitting the wolf, but it wouldn't let go. I started screaming like crazy. Help! Help! Someone help me! Ayúdenme! Then a strong wind blew from the north to the south. The wind was so strong and cold it spun me around. When it stopped, I touched my chin and it had frost on it. I looked all around me and the wild animals were gone. It was as if the wind had blown them away. I pulled up my pants and looked at the bite the black wolf had given me. There was nothing, not even a bite or a scratch. Then I looked at the horse-headed creature that was in the shed. It was La Ciguanaba. She gave me a gesture as if she was trying to say, I will get you next time. Her eyes got small and with her finger, she pointed at me. She turned around and walked to the back of the shed. Then she disappeared, just like that. I got my things and ran out of the place. I ran fast. I ran so fast I didn't care if there was a drunken man coming my way. I ran. When I got to the village, a man asked me, Hey kid, are you alright? I can't remember if I had answered or not. I just kept running. When my mom saw me, she said, Juan, why are you so late? I was worried about you. I thought something bad had happened to you. Are you okay? You look like if you saw a ghost. I told her what had happened, and she said, You see, I told you she was real. Now go to sleep. It's already late. We'll talk about it in the morning. That night, I wasn't able to sleep because I kept on thinking about what had happened to me. He stops and gets up and walks to his room. Go to sleep now. Story time is over. Yes, girls, that's enough of storytelling for one night. Now get ready and go to sleep, say my aunts. This is the story my abuelito told us that night, the story of La Ciguanaba. This is the story that haunts many children in El Salvador. As we get ready to go to bed, in our minds we are still thinking about La Ciguanaba. Is she watching us now? Will she come and get us tonight? Today I'm so involved in 826 Valencia. I'm on the Youth Advisory Board, where I get to plan readings and attend other events with young writers like myself.